Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Middle East Report. Here we are in the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office as part of the memory for Holocaust Memorial Day. It's a great honour to have the opportunity today to interview Sir Erick Pickles, MP. Erick, can you describe for us your role and responsibility as the United Kingdom's envoy on post-Holocaust issues?
Well, there are two things that I'm principally concerned with. First of all, it's Holocaust education, and I lead our delegation on an organisation called IRA, which is an international grouping. And you've got to remember, in some parts of the world, there is perhaps not as settled view on the Holocaust as there is in the United Kingdom, and people seeking to suggest, well, it was all the Germans and it was just Hitler and a few others, where actually there was a high degree of complicity by the general population. The second thing I'm concerned with is restitution, which is trying to ensure that valuable property and not such valuable property is returned to their rightful owners. And I find it extraordinary, 70 years after the war, that the Nuremberg laws that distribute property is still in existence. So I'm partly concerned with that. You know, it's not all about, Klints and Picassos. It's sometimes just a single book with a name on the fly piece, and that perhaps is the only evidence that a family has of what a grandparent's handwriting was.
How significant and important does the British government attach Holocaust Memorial Day, particularly as it's taking place here at the British Foreign Office?
Yeah, well, of course, the Prime Minister's committed to a permanent monument and a learning centre, and there'll be some announcements about that fairly soon. We do recognise that we're in a race because the number of survivors of the Holocaust is by natural process going to disappear as we move through this and the next decade. So we are recording as many survivors as we can in very high quality film to make sure there's a permanent record there when they're no longer here. We've actually gone a stage further in the Holocaust Museum in Newark. They're producing an interactive video. So I think it's 3 or 4 of the Holocaust survivors have agreed to, besides give their testimony, answer 1,000 most common questions. So afterwards, when they've passed away, we'll still have that interrelationship between a survivor and a member of the public.
How important is it that we remember and honour the survivors of the Holocaust?
Well, they are more than precious, not just because of the individuals, and I've grown to know a number of them, and they're all just fantastic characters. But it's important to understand that a government in the 20th century, a government from a country that produced Goethe and produced Mozart and produced Beethoven and produced Western civilization to a large extent, decided to murder its citizens and to eradicate a whole race throughout the whole of Europe, and to use modern techniques, modern production techniques to do that.
The British government is taking a leading role in terms of Holocaust education. In your opinion, how important is it that we teach the next generation about the horrors of the Holocaust?
Well, the Select Committee just produced an excellent report on that, and I think teachers have a great deal of difficulty. And there's almost a worry of kind of trivialising the Holocaust or trying to stretch its analogy too far. It's really important to understand the Holocaust is it's not about ethics and good manners. It's about how an entire population can become so corrupted that they willingly see their neighbours liquidated.
We commemorating the darkest times in human history, the Second World War, the Holocaust, the annihilation of 6 million Jews. That we cannot change, but we can change tomorrow. And we can do that with education, commemorating what happened in order to educate our youth, the young people, in order to make sure that this will never happen again, that people will not stand by when this happens, whenever it happens. And the British government is doing tremendous work in Prime Minister Cameron in looking after this important task, educating the youngsters, taking 27,000 British youth to Auschwitz. It's a very important task.
I think it's absolutely crucial that we ensure people never forget the Holocaust. I grew up in a time just after the Second World War where some of the shocking details were becoming known for the first time by those who had not heard it. They'd been working in this country, they had not been overseas, and for them it was a critical time. We're coming to the time in history now where some of the survivors who are witnesses to what happened are passing on. Our duty is to ensure that their stories, because it's reality, their stories are preserved and that we remember what happened in the Holocaust, that it was something that was horrifying and must never be allowed to happen again. The danger is, if we were to forget that horror, forget why it's important that we should never allow it to happen again, if our memories fade away, then think what danger there could be. We can't let that happen. And therefore, the work we do in education, the work we do with the Holocaust Memorial Trust is very important. We'll carry on working with them.
What are the policies that the British government are pursuing to confront the rise of anti-Semitism?
It's massively important for us to make a really important point that Britain would be the lesser without a Jewish community, that the Jewish community makes an important element of what Britain is. And it is massively, overwhelmingly important that kids should be able to go to school without fear, that kids should be able to go to universities without fear of being dealt with by hate preachers and the like. And the government takes that extremely seriously. I mean, we've seen what has happened on the continent, particularly in Paris. I went across to Paris just before, a little bit before Christmas, to talk with Jewish students over there, and I don't want to see the level of threat that they felt over here in the United Kingdom.
I think we all in Israel grew up with the notion of never again. I remember this since I was 7, never again. Through the education system in Israel, through what we did, the work we did in the youth movements. When I was youth councillor, Israeli government, the Israeli education system ran various programs, takes Israeli school children, high school children to Poland, to the death camps, in order for them to remember. The survivors are, not all of them are with us anymore. It's important for us to remember and to make sure, for Israel to make sure that we're not just homeland for the Jewish people, but that also this will never happen again.
We work obviously with the Board of Deputies, we work with the Community Trust to try to ensure that there are opportunities for people to learn why it is wrong. We also, of course, have made sure that legislation in this country points out very clearly that you should not carry out any activity or express opinions that are anti-Semitic where you're trying to create problems. Of course, there should be freedom of expression, but you don't use that freedom of expression as an excuse to foment trouble. Because, of course, in our communities in the United Kingdom, we have tried to ensure that we exist in a way that where different communities can come together, where we can work in harmony. It's difficult sometimes, but that's the point. The right thing is often difficult to do.
Do you believe that we're living through a paradox? Because here in Britain and also in Europe, we never had so much Holocaust education. We see that films are being made about the Holocaust, there's documentaries, and also this is on the national curriculum. So why is it that we're seeing today a rise of anti-Semitism, the likes we haven't seen since the 1930s and the 1940s?
Well, the degree of anti-Semitism exists because there is a deliberate attempt to conflate Jews with Israel. And I mean, I think one of the most shocking things on the BBC was the Charlie Hebdo march, where this French Jewish lady was sort of pinned down by a BBC reporter, demanding for her to explain Jewish foreign policy, and wasn't this the cause of the violence, as if this poor French woman had anything to do with the Israeli government. And there's something slightly medieval about it, about blaming the Jews for what Israel does. And I think our public broadcaster and others need to take note about this.
How do we keep the memory of the Holocaust alive for future generations?
There are two things: education, education, and education. That's the first thing. And the second thing is really reading and listening to the stories of first generation, the survivors themselves, and the second generation, because it's through these personal stories that this horrible past gives itself a meaning. It's hard to remember numbers and to fathom the actual tragedy.
Well, we're obviously making a big effort in terms of putting in films, making sure that testimony is recorded, that it's on very future-proof media, that we're looking in ways in which we can find some degree of interaction. But also the Holocaust Education Trust has done some work with survivors' families, and we heard the Israeli charge d'affaires talk about his experience as a child, as a kind of a first-generation experience in the Holocaust. And I saw something very moving about a daughter and giving her father's testimony. And she talks about what is her grandmother turning to the son and saying, in one of these roll calls, look after yourself. I'm old, I've had a life, but do what you need to do to survive. And it did occur to me that here is a granddaughter giving voice to a grandmother she's never met, a voice that people like Himmler and Hitler not only did kill, but wanted to destroy the memory of completely. And I think in a way we'll be able to keep it alive there.
It's been a real privilege and a real honour to be here today at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office as we remember the Holocaust, and particularly to have the opportunity to interview Sir Erick Pickles, MP, on the issue of anti-Semitism and the importance of Holocaust education, as well as hearing a personal account from the acting Israeli ambassador, Eitan Na'eh, on his experience of his parents surviving the Holocaust and the importance of tackling the issue of anti-Semitism.